I'll just put you on mute. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are joining us. We have Christine with us, and she is 12 hours, behind. We are 12 hours ahead of her, and I'm joining you from Bangladesh. Christine is joining you from Canada, and we are super excited because we are going to talk about the best form of research, very rightly said by Albert Einstein, and we are going to talk about playful inquiry in the early years. No matter if you are joining us, from non-PYP background, so this session will cater the needs of other, educators as well. To talk about Christine, Christine is a highly experienced educator. She has worked as a PYP coordinator. She is an active member of IBEN, that is IB Educator Network. She's working as a workshop leader, consultant, and the list is long. And I'm really, really happy to have Kirsten with us. She is going to talk about one of my favorite topics. Please don't take me wrong. I have never been to early years classroom. It's quite a challenging zone, but being a PYP coordinator, I have observed this wonderful bunch of little kids, those who are full of energy. And when they are into the play mode, they learn how to learn. And here we go. We would learn to, we are happy to learn from Kirsten. So let's learn about Kirsten from Kirsten. A very warm welcome to you, Kirsten. Here you go.
Just after 8:30 in the morning here in beautiful Alberta, Canada. I live in a small hamlet just outside of the city of Calgary. Calgary has about 1.5 million people, and the little hamlet where I live has about 25 people. So a very small hamlet. We've lived out here for almost 30 years, my husband Rob and our daughter Hannah. And I spent 28 years being a classroom teacher, and I retired from the classroom just about 3 years ago. And now I get to spend my time being more of a consultant and a workshop leader with IB Educator Network, and also just doing some independent work with schools. And before the pandemic, I was able to spend time in classrooms with children, and I'm very much looking forward to getting back into that role. So I'm just super delighted to be here with you all. I'm excited to be on this kind of cool new way of sharing information, and I'm going to get started with just a little bit more about me, and I'm going to show you a picture of me when I was about 3.5 years old. And this is me in my passport picture, getting ready to move back to England, where my parents were from. And I love to put this picture out when I'm talking to children or to teachers and educators who love the early years as much as I do, just because I think it just helps you see. I think we're all still that 3.5-year-old inside our heads often. This is just a picture of my house, and that is pretty much what it looks like right now. The leaves are changing. It's a beautiful time of year here in Canada. And this is a sign that my daughter wrote when she was about 3.5 or 4. And if you're an early years teacher, I'm sure you can read that spelling. It says, "Everybody welcome." And I'm hoping that everybody, regardless of whether you're a teacher of little children or an IB teacher, a PYP teacher, I'm hoping that you will enjoy this time that we get to spend together, and that you will get something from it that you can take back into your work as you move forward. So here we go. So I'd like you just to sort of picture yourself, imagine yourself when you were 6 years old and you have the entire day to yourself. And I'd like you to think about, what would you be doing? Who might you be seeing? And most importantly for me, I think, how are you feeling? How are you feeling when you're 6 years old and you have the whole day to yourself? And I'm going to kindly ask if you could just throw a few little words into the chat. I'm going to pop back over and have a look and see at the chat here. And just tell us, briefly, how are you feeling?
A very warm welcome to everyone, those who have joined us live. So Kristen has very wonderful questions. A few questions for you. What are you doing? What are you seeing? How are you feeling? So just let us know what do you think about those questions and what are your answers. We would love to hear from you. Imagine yourself at 6 years old. You have the entire day to yourself. What are you doing? What are you seeing? How are you feeling? Feel free to share your pictures. Kristen was looking wonderful. You were very cute. So we would love to hear from you always. Please share your reflections, your immediate thoughts. Mm-hmm. I can't see any answers coming up. There is Sahana saying good evening from Bangladesh. A very good evening, Sahana. Audience, we would love to know from you. It becomes more interesting when it's a dialogue. We have people joining us. So those who have joined us just now, imagine yourself at 6 years old. So go back in time and tell us what are you doing, what are you seeing, and how are you feeling. We have Saima Arham from India, and I know her. Happy day from Tamil Nadu. So there are a few questions for everyone. Justin,
And you know
you
what?
can go ahead.
You will. Keep thinking about that, everybody. So the reason why I wanted you to think about yourself.
I think there is a time lapse. We are unable to see the questions. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
The voice is breaking. I don't know where there's a problem at my end. Yes, I can see some answers in the chat. And yes, sharing that hello, good evening. If I'm 6-year-old child, I would be playing toys. Yes, very natural. Toys all around. And then
This is great. I just unmuted myself, friend. Yeah, I love it too. I love that you'd be feeling happy and enthusiastic. That's perfect. And the reason really what I'd like you to keep that in mind is because I think it's really important for us to remember that our experiences as children and what we value and how we view children really impacts your role as a teacher. And so I think that it's really great to keep that in mind, that if you see yourself as a playful, inquisitive, curious person, you're going to bring that sort of those feelings to your classroom and to your space too. All right. This is a pretty big quote, and I'll read it to you because it's from the British Columbia Early Learning Framework. British Columbia is another province in Canada, and they have a really lovely learning framework for the early years. And it just reinforces to me that feeling that our image, or the image of the child that is held by people, really influences our decisions about children, the way we interact with children, and most importantly, I think, the environments that we construct that help children grow, develop, and learn. And I think that that's really at the heart of our work when we're talking about play and playful inquiry, are those learning environments, those spaces and the materials and the opportunities that we give to children. So here's another one. So I'm going to ask you, now that you've sort of put yourself as your 6-year-old and you've already indicated that you've been doing some playing and you're looking around. So in your classroom space and as an adult now, what does play mean to you? So what does play look like or feel like or sound like as an adult now? I'm just popping and looking at the chat here too. So now you're the grown up, and maybe you are still playing with toys and you're still having a great time. And maybe you still get to play with sand and water, which I think you might at the beach. But how does this look and feel? And if you had to define play, what would your definition be? And we'll just take a couple of seconds to do that. So often we have to do this kind of an explanation to our parents or to different teachers, maybe teachers who've never taught little children. Maybe they don't really see play as the same way that we do. So think about your definition if you had to define it or talk about it. Thanks, Vivian. Having fun with things around you. Totally. I love it. Looks and feels like fun. Yeah, agreed. Anyone else? You're welcome. I think often our colleagues or our parents may feel like fun is not the intention of our schools, and I think that's where maybe we have to um, share a little bit more about why we feel that play and learning go hand in hand, and that's actually what we're going to talk about here tonight. Okay, keep thinking. I'm going to move forward. So most of my thinking and my understanding of learning for young children was really influenced from the National Association of the Education of Young Children, which is an American nonprofit organization. And when I first started teaching 28 years ago, more than 28 now, I was in a classroom of 11 and 12-year-olds, and that was grade 5 and grade 6. In Canada, we speak grade 5, grade 6. And I was there for a couple of years, and I loved it. And then there was this new school opening, and they said, Christine, would you like to come and work at this new school? And I said, well, I'd love to work at this new school. And they said, well, we'd like you to be a grade 1 teacher. And I said, grade 1? Aren't those people 6? And they said, yes. And I said, okay. So I took the risk and I went and taught. And from that time forward, the majority of my teaching career has been in kindergarten to grade 3, even though I've taught all the way up to grade 8, which would be like, 13-year-olds. And I thought, I don't even know what I'm doing here. These guys are 6. And so I spent a lot of time looking at what developmentally appropriate practice looked like. And that's where I think I developed these understandings of how best children learn. So when we found the PYP at my school out here in Millerville, we were really drawn to it because it was inquiry based, it was play based, it was hands-on. And so the quotes we're going to see on the next few slides are actually from a PYP document for parents. And I love it because it's very, very much speaks to the heart of what I believe play and inquiry are. So this is really talking about from birth, children are hands-on natural inquirers, learn through playful interactions with people and the environment. And in your chat, you've even said that when you've looked around, you see sand and water, you see toys, you see enthusiasm, and you see play. I love that quote. And I think that's what really spoke to me was that from when we think about children as young children, as babies, they're just naturally inquiring and curious. This is the next part that I thought was great. Play is an essential aspect of a child's healthy development. And we know that research tells us that when children are playing and engaged in playful activities, that they are going to have a healthy development. And I'll let you in on a little secret that I don't just think play is for the early years, I think play is for all the years. So that's what I also thought. When I came from teaching those older children to working with the younger children, it really became important to me to make sure that as I worked with older children, I still had that kind of playful attitude. And there's another one, learning through play-based learning, children develop and nurture fundamental knowledge and skills. And so if you're in a PYP school, we talk about the approaches to learning skills. And very, very much do we see these kind of fundamental knowledge and skills being developed when we work in a play-based way. So children are working in authentic ways. They are developing their knowledge. They're using these skills in an authentic way. And that's what this leads us to, is the primary years program model for early years learning. And I think when you look at these 4 big features of early years learning, play is 1/4 of it, but the other part of it, sort of across the circle, is those learning spaces. And so one really influenced the other. And without that really strong relationship that we build, we need that piece as well. And that leads us to symbolic exploration and expression. And those are the things that we develop over time with kids to help them make sense of their world. So, of course, I'm an IB person. I love this model. But I also think even if you're not in an IB school, that you can sort of see how these 4 big features really could resonate for you in your setting. All right. This is a really kind of a neat graphic from verywellfamily.com, which is a US-based sort of it's really great for parents as well as educators. It's a lovely supportive organization for families. And sometimes it's kind of interesting to, when you're watching the children that you're working with, or even your own children, to look at the kinds of play, the types of play that children work through. And their research and their kind of the development of this graphic was really based on the work of an educator in the very early 1900s. And she identified sort of 7 different areas of play, and they've kind of looked at these. And I love looking at these. So have a quick glance. I'm hoping you can see this well on your screen. And I think at any time of the day, in most earlier settings, you could see all of this happening, all of these kinds of play. So we have children that play side by side. We call that parallel play. We have a child that's kind of more cautious, maybe the onlooker child at the top in the right-hand corner. This is someone who maybe is a little more cautious, wants to check things out before they step in. I'm sure you know children like that, or maybe you're a person like that too. We see cooperative play. We see associative play where children are sharing materials and they're kind of vibing off each other or riffing off each other. They're maybe not as playing together, but they are working together. And I want you to look at the unoccupied child, the child that's staring out the window in the top left-hand corner. When I went to school back, hundreds of years ago, if you were that unoccupied child in the classroom, you would be reprimanded for being that unoccupied child. That would be the child that would be staring out the window or lost in their own head. And often those were the children that were, in trouble in school. And maybe even today, those are the children that are not as understood, and maybe they get into trouble in school as well. But I love that this is also a type of play for children. Maybe this child is using their imagination. They're thinking creatively. They're thinking out a problem in their head. We don't know necessarily what's happening. They may not be as engaged as we think they are, but maybe there's some deep learning going on in there. So I love that this child is also honored in this representation of the different types of play. So I would check out that website. It's lovely. Okay, the document that we use in the PYP is called Principles into Practice. And it has 3 big sections. It has the learner, it has the learning and teaching section, it has the learning community section. So I've taken some quotes out of the learner section and really talking about play. And this one to me really speaks to the whole child. We talk about educating and learning for the whole child. And so when children are playing rather, they're integrating all kinds of learning, social, physical, emotional, intellectual, and language development. And I think that we, as childhood educators, can really see all these pieces during the day in our classrooms. So there's that nice integration of all these kinds of learning. They also develop their concepts and skills in meaningful context. So sometimes we even talk about thinking like a scientist, problem solving like an engineer, expressing yourself like an artist, a visual artist, or a dancer. And I love that these concepts and skills are being developed in that meaningful context where children and people, all learners, are constructing their understandings together. So in this picture, you can see these guys are in the sand pit or in the sandbox. You know, they're playing, but they're doing a lot of connecting to those big concepts and skills. And that this quote also brings me back to that idea of that real world connection or those representations of the world. And so children should be offered opportunities to apply these mental representations of the world to people and objects and situations. So when we think about that child who might have been staring out the window and maybe thinking this kid's not really engaged with what we're doing, I think maybe that kid is sometimes, thinking deeply about those representations and hopefully making those connections. And that's our job, really. We understand the curriculum. We know all the things that have to be taught and need to be taught. So I think it's our job as the teachers to make sure that we're providing these opportunities for kids. And we'll talk a little bit about how we might be able to do that. So if kids are being able to have these opportunities, then they're going to see these as the key to their future academic learning. So the work that we do in the early years is foundational. It's very important. And I think I think most people understand those pieces, but it's good for us to keep that in mind as well. And this one, this quote really speaks to agency. So the children are engaged and they have the motivation to learn. So in the PYP, we talk about agency as voice, choice, and ownership. And I know that you, in this particular format, you've been able to listen to Luke Gerlach talk about agency last month, I think. And for us, I think it's really important that the children see themselves as involved in the classroom, in the decisions, in the opportunities that they have, the activities, and we call that agency. I believe we all have agency. It just depends how much we get to show or give or engage with our agency. It depends on the context, right? So here's some boys in my kindergarten classroom a few years ago doing some work together. They're excited to be there. They're engaged. They have opportunity, and I think they felt a strong sense of the personal agency that they all have. Okay. So let's go back and have another think about our image of the child. So if you agree that children are natural inquirers from birth, and that children are curious and capable learners, and that they are rich in potential, can you just put a yes or a, I don't know, exclamation mark in the chat? I'm going to just pop over to the stream here so I can see what your chatting says. So can we all agree with that? I think that's my question. Can we all agree with these statements? I'll wait a couple seconds. Wow, there's people from Albania. Hello, Albania. From Canada. So let me know. Are you feeling that, yes, you can agree with all these great statements? Oh, I said great statements because I kind of gave away my feelings about it. Yes, thank you. because that brings me back to how you felt about yourself as a 6-year-old and how you feel about yourself as an adult regarding play. Yay. I knew you would all agree with me. It's kind of a rhetorical question. Awesome. All right. So keeping these in mind, natural inquirers, curious and capable, rich in potential. I love curious and capable learners because that really speaks to the inclusive part of the PYP to me. Everybody can learn. All right, if we believe now that play-based learning facilitates the best learning for young children, and we do, because y'all said you did, then let's think about this. Are we providing opportunities for children to ask questions, investigate, build and test theories, make meaning, develop skills, and also reflect and express themselves? This is a big list. This is quite a big list. And I'm not always a fan of checklists, but this might be a nice list to keep somewhere that you can see, maybe in your planning document, maybe in your teacher day book, just a list of things for you to sort of say, okay, how's it going today? Are the kids going to have opportunities to ask questions? Sometimes people think that inquiry is just asking questions, and I'm going to say that it's more than that. It's part of that, but I think that if you were to look at all of these bullet points, to me, they speak to what an inquiry-based classroom looks like. Okay, so do they have times to investigate, to build and test theories, to make meaning? That's the bottom line for me. If kids are not able to connect their learning and make meaning, then I'm not sure how deep their learning is. So that's a big one for me. And skills are important. So are they being given opportunity to develop those skills? I think sometimes people, when we say that we are engaged in play-based inquiry, that they sort of think, well, what about the facts? What about the skills? What about the knowledge? Are they there? And I say 100% they are. But it's just sort of the way that I was taught skills and knowledge looks very different in the classrooms that we have now. We've learned about things. We've read the research. We've engaged with big ideas about this. And so that's why when I went to school, it was really, here's all the knowledge and the skills, dump them in my head, and then here's the test, tell me what you know. And I didn't really make connections. And I'm the kind of learner that needed supports to make those connections. I was really good at memorizing things and telling you what the answers were back, but I had a harder time making those connections. And that's why making meaning is so very important to me, because it speaks to my heart as a learner. And reflecting and expressing themselves. So that's big too. Do children have a chance to sort of look back at where they've come in their learning? Do they get to set goals for themselves and achieve those goals? And are we providing those opportunities for them to do that? And being able to express themselves. So when I was in school, we only had one way to show our understanding. And usually it was a multiple choice test, maybe a short answer test, but it certainly wasn't a list of options for me to express myself and my understanding of anything. So I love this. I love this as a little check-in for us. Maybe keep it handy. So if we do that and have a look at these pictures, I've just got some pictures of some of my friends. You know, do we see opportunities here in these pictures for children investigating or making meaning or developing skills? Hopefully you're seeing some opportunities here. And that middle picture is really some snow on a cookie sheet. And that's a January day in Alberta where we live. And I actually went out and got fresh snow, chopped it, got the big shovel and got snow so I could bring it in for the kids. And we worked every day taking temperature and looking at what happens when we bring the snow inside. Maybe you have to make ice cubes where you are. I don't know. All right, here's some more pictures of some friends. So, can you see in these pictures opportunities for kids to develop their skills and test theories and really express themselves? I hope you can. All right. So what about inquiry? We talked about play. I've sort of hinted really strongly at my understanding and definition of what inquiry is just by those last few slides. So what about inquiry? And maybe this might challenge your thinking a little bit, but this is a quote from Loris Malaguzzi, who really is the father of the Reggio Emilia approach to early learning. A beautiful program, a beautiful philosophy that is really well supported and connected to the PYP early learning work. And so this quote says, once children see themselves as authors and inventors, once they are helped to discover the pleasures of inquiry, their motivation and interest explode. So I think hopefully you can see how connected this quote is to the work we do in the PYP. That sense of agency, motivation, interest. Authors, inventors, I love those two terms very much. And seeing yourself as the author of your own learning is really important. And yes, that is a child hammering nails into a pumpkin. With some adult support there, I think you can see too. Okay, so inquiry, inventor, author, keep all that in your head. And this is a quote from Kath Murdoch, who I'm sure you've heard of, an Australian educator, a brilliant thinker about the inquiry. So Kath Murdoch says inquiry is a stance that sees the child as competent, capable learner, adult as skillful facilitator and co-researcher, and curriculum as fluid and contestable. So let's uncover this a little bit more. So we've sort of agreed back a few slides ago and in the chat that children are competent and capable learners. Yay, check that box. So our role as the adult in all of this is not just to sort of sit at your desk, answer your email, and have a cup of coffee. You're engaged. You're the skillful facilitator because you're the curriculum expert. You know what needs to be done. You know the standards that needs to be addressed. If you've taught for a few years, you know what children are coming from and going to in their learning because you can see that continuum across the years and across the grades. So you're the skillful facilitator. You're the one that knows what's coming next in that curriculum as well. So that's where you're really negotiating and figuring out how best you can help children make those connections. And I love this co-researcher. So I like the idea that we're coaching and we're also the guide of this inquiry, but you're in there with them. You're helping them find things out, answer their questions. I love that, when I went to school, the teacher was kind of the person who knew everything. They were the person at the front of the room that was there just to tell you everything you needed to know. And now I think we look at ourselves as being that co-researcher with our children, finding stuff out, answering questions. And I also love that sort of takes us to this next part about curriculum being fluid and contestable. And what that sort of means is that we know there's some things that have to be taught. We know that. But how are we going to do it? And I think that's where that kind of negotiating the curriculum comes into play, or thinking about curriculum as contestable. That doesn't mean we don't do things, because that's our job. We're there to do the things we're supposed to do. That's what we're paid to do. I think what the idea here maybe is around thinking about it as being not stuck, that there's some fluidity to it. I hope that makes sense for you. I like to think of us being inquiry teachers because we are inquirers ourselves, that it's a way of being and thinking. It's not that we're going to do inquiry now. It's just we are inquirers. And that brings us to this next quote, who's from Kathy Short, who also really informed a lot of the work that the PYP has done thinking about inquiry. So Kathy Short is an American educator. She says, once we explore inquiry as natural to learning, then we can engage in the difficult task of creating learning environments that immerse learners in these processes. So back to our slide with the three things. So natural, inquiry is natural. And that now, because we believe these things, we need to create these learning environments that are going to immerse our learners in these processes, giving them opportunities to demonstrate, to problem solve, to investigate, all of those things. So I love that. It's natural. But the hardest part, I think, is coming up, and that's thinking about that learning space. All right. This is a quote right out of Principles into Practice. The way we structure space and environment indicates what we believe about children and how we learn. So we're kind of back to the beginning of the conversation this morning or this evening, thinking about what do you believe about children and how we learn. So thinking about your space. Is it accessible? Is it flexible? How could play be supported in this space? How can the materials be accessed? And this is a big one here. What does your schedule look like? We'll talk about that a little bit more, but maybe you could think now about how could play be supported in your space. And often I think the scheduling is the part that really can be tricky for us in schools, because we're probably all in a timetable. We have interruptions with things that are really important, but they're still interruptions. And so I think the idea is to think about your schedule so that you're offering big blocks of time that allow for uninterrupted engagement. And so when I go to visit schools as a IB school visitor, one of the first things we get to look at are the timetables for the school. And so I often will sit and look and think, okay, how much time do these kids have to actually be engaged in a playful inquiry, in some work that is letting them think and investigate and be creative? So if the day is really choppy, I might ask some questions about how could you make that offer big blocks of uninterrupted time for kids. The other part I think is accessibility and flexibility. So we want kids to engage with their own personal agency when they come into the space. So do they have an opportunity to find the things they need? Or is it just all in the teacher cabinet? Or, in your space as opposed to our space? And I think that's another tell for me, is that when I hear people talk about my classroom and my students, I just wonder if it's our classroom and our students. It's a small shift, but it's a huge shift in how you think about kids. So can the kids find what they need when they need it? Or do they have to always come to you? Can they access the materials easily? Do they know where the stuff is? If they need glue sticks, if they need scissors, do they know where to go to find that? Or do they have to come to the adult in the space? Those are really big, important pieces too. So that gives them that sense of agency. They understand that they are in a community of learners rather than just in the teacher's classroom. That was what I went to school, to the teacher's classroom. It didn't really feel like our classroom at all. So these are big questions to keep in mind. It's a lot to keep in mind, but I think all of this really will support your understanding and your commitment to offering kids playful inquiry. All right. So here's a classroom space. Have a look at this one. And I'm actually going to pop back one here. So thinking about accessible space, flexible space, accessing materials. What does this classroom feel like to you? And maybe you can throw some words into the chat of some things you're noticing in this space. Would you want to be a kid in this space? And I'm just catching up on your chat right now, so hang on. Patrick says, play helps children develop new competencies, leading to enhanced confidence. Right on. It allows children to learn how to work in groups, to share, to negotiate, to resolve conflicts. Yes, beautiful. Yeah. How do you promote visible thinking in early childhood? Ooh, that's a lovely question. Let me think about that for a sec. Quite honestly, I think the way we promote visible thinking is to actually do that self-talk that you might do inside your head out loud. So when you are working through something with the kids, that you're talking about it out loud. So you're actually modeling that thinking that's going on inside your head. And I'm not sure if that's exactly what your question is asking, but to me, that's what sort of comes to mind. So talk about the problem solving as you're solving the problem together. How might we do this? Oh, if I try this, maybe this will work. maybe if I do this, this might happen. What could happen if I do that? So kind of doing that out loud talking, I think, is one way that you might be able to develop that visible thinking. Because when you're right, when they're really, really little, you can't really whip out the see, think, and wonder and have them actually write in it. But maybe you could use that visible thinking tool with them to do some drawing, and or even dictate to you their thinking and you write it down for them. A lot of that happens in early childhood classrooms. So just looking at your comments around this learning space, um, Patrick, thank you. Patrick's going to give us some ways to promote visible thinking, so we'll get back to that in a sec. Your comments are saying that the materials are at child level. Yes. Flexible furniture. Yes. Y'all need to know that this is pre-pandemic seating in this classroom. What else do we see? Yep, they can access. What does the lighting look like? How does it feel to you if you were to come into this space? Can you think about some words that could describe how the space feels? Would you want to be in here all day? I'm just checking your chat here, friends. Yeah, you're exactly right. The materials are available. Yeah, and there's some flexibility, I think, there too, so that if they need to move around, they can. The thing I like too is that there are kind of like open spaces. This is not my classroom, by the way, so I'm not bragging on my classroom for you, but I like how there's some space there so that kids can move around. Can you find the teacher's desk in this space? Thank you. The space is inviting. Yeah, nature's a part of this classroom. Totally agree with you that way. So if you see the teacher's desk, it's actually hidden way in the back, pushed against the wall. And I think that when I thought about my kindergarten classroom, my grade 1 classroom, when I was in school, the teacher's desk was front and center. It was like the power position, right? It was at the front because that was really the most important person in the room was the teacher. And in this space, this teacher has put their desk over kind of in the corner where it's not intrusive. It feels to me like this classroom has um, that kind of community feel to it. I'm just reading Linda's question or comment. Yes. You like to see the teacher desk in operation, and that would tell me how much agency the children have. And this teacher is just a part of this classroom. The space allows the children to work independently, student-centric. Yes. Never had a desk. Yes. Right. When I first started teaching, I had the Princess of Power desk, man. It was front and center because that's what I came from, and I had to sort of learn how to share the space, right? I always say it was a benevolent dictatorship when I was in there at the beginning of my career as the boss. And you don't abdicate your bossness, just so you know, but it certainly wasn't a shared space. And I found that instead of, when I went to school, we all lined up beside the teacher's desk to get like our work checked. And so, having that desk at the front and center, I guess, made it really easy for the teacher to do that. But Linda, I like that you never had a desk and you work with kids. I found that over time, once I kind of figured things out and I did some reading and educated myself about this, and worked with some fabulous collaborators and mentors, not going to lie, those people helped me 1,000,000%. I really found that the desk just became a place where I would just pile stuff over the day and then tidy it at the end of the day. But it wasn't sort of the place where I would sit or work from. So I get what you're saying, Linda, 100%. Yes, this is a darker space right now because the lights are low, and sometimes all the fluorescent lights are on in this space and sometimes they're not, just depends, right? Um, to me, it just has that really nice, natural, warm sense to it, and that's why I like to share it with you guys. All right, let's have a look at this. What's our time here? Whoa, okay. How about this one? How do you feel about this one? What comes to your mind when you have a look at this guy? And full disclosure, this is just like part of this classroom space, but just to give you a feel. I feel like it's quite different than the other one. What words pop into your head? Pop them into the chat. This is a classroom for, yes, Linda, you and I are the same. I do find this overwhelming for color too. I think you're either in the I love this or I do not love this. I have a little bit of trouble focusing, and so this might be a classroom that would take some time for me to get used to, both as a learner and as the teacher in the classroom. It's certainly bright, and that can be quite inviting. Some of the materials are not at aren't at the children's level. Yes, I would agree. This is a classroom. This is a preschool classroom, like a pre-kindergarten classroom. See, Sahana loves it. See, Sahana's in that I love this camp. Yeah, I feel it might be missing some. The thing I do love about it are the big windows. At least there's that. And obviously the blinds are drawn right now. Maybe it's too hot at this part of the day to have it open. It is spacious, 100% spacious, maybe a little bit too bright. I think what I like about it is that there's some carpet area, there's some tile area, looks like there's some mats, lots of toys, maybe not all accessible to the children for sure, but that maybe because those are going to be shared later, right? I can sort of see that some of these toys may come down and others may go back up, right? We put them in hibernation for a little bit of time and bring them back out. Do you see that there could be some flexibility in the space? Do you see some seating options? They have a lot of cool toys in this space. But I think the thing I liked about it is that the toys may not be, yes, Linda, agree, may not be stuck doing one thing. So when we're choosing toys, I think it's nice to choose toys that have more than one function, right? Like the fire trucks are great. I'm not sure what else the fire trucks could become, but maybe that would be a question to ask the children. What else could we do with this? Yes, sometimes I think we need to be very careful and thoughtful about the kinds of materials and the things we have on the wall for the children that have those sensory pieces. Um, you know, there's even been research about having too much stuff up on your bulletin boards that can be distracting and overwhelming. So those are all those kinds of thoughtful considerations that need to happen. I know that when I started the school year, there was nothing on the bulletin boards because those were our bulletin boards and they were going to be constructed together with the materials and the work that we were doing in the space. So as much as Teachers Pay Teacher or Pinterest have influenced the way classrooms could look, I think for me, it's really about making the space our space, and so building it together. There's certainly spaces that can have too much, and I think that's where you have to really know your children and know what their needs are too. So thanks, Linda, I agree with you. It's important. All right, one more space to check out. This is actually a space with some kids working in it. So what do you feel about this one? This is obviously an outdoor learning space. I'm really biased about this space because this is the space at my school across the street from me, Millerville School, where I spent 16 years teaching, and I was a coordinator there for 12 years. But these are some of my kindergarten children working outdoors. This space is used all the year long, even in January and February when it's really, really cold. I think I put this in here mostly so that we remember that our learning spaces can be inside and also outside of the building. Linda's saying opportunities to explore and develop a love of learning for nature. Exactly. Yes. Thanks, Linda. I agree with you. So this space also has a garden in it that has sort of all the kind of native plants that grow in our area, because we're zone 2. If you're a gardener, you might know that that means like really, really cold and a short growing season. And so we made sure that the teacher who was in charge of actually developing this garden, the grade 3 teacher, did a beautiful job of finding plants that would always be available to grow and be successful in this space. And it has grown. This has been a 10-year ongoing project. Definitely a space for tactile learners, yes. And an opportunity for kids to get outside. This became a really important space during this pandemic time when kids were and they still are in our province, cohorted, and being able to get out of the building has been really important. And yeah, they go out, I always say, everybody says, you go outside in the winter when it's really, really minus 30 Celsius. Yeah, because we have the clothes and we have the technology for that. So we know how to dress for the weather. If it's really cold and there's a wind, we don't go outside with the kids because that would be too cold and you could get frostbite really, really and truly. But I love to put this one up because I think it's important to remember that our learning spaces are indoors and outdoors. And so this one speaks to my heart quite a bit. All right. So thinking back again to your image of the child, your image of yourself as a teacher, an educator, and here's the next part, the image of colleagues and the image of families. So we have the learner, learning and teaching, and we have the learning community. And that's the other third pillar of the PYP principles into practice. Our pillars are really 1/3 the learner, 1/3 learning and teaching, and 1/3 the learning community, if you want to think about it that way. That's really important. So how are we making sure that we educate our parents, that we help our parents and our community understand why we do things the way we do? It's really important to have their influence in our classroom spaces in our school as well. So there's that connection too. So making sure that we're representing our families as well, really, really vital. We talk about parents as partners and stakeholders and all of those things, but keeping it real, how are we doing that? So just a question. I love to ask questions, I may not have all the answers, like I never have all the answers, but I do like to put a question out there for you. Just keep thinking about that. Here's just a few tidbits. It's a busy slide. I apologize for that, but there's too many good things here. I had to keep it all in there for you. This is from Kath Murdoch again. So we're considering the aesthetic of the space, our use and placement of furniture and objects and images. We talked about that. Thanks to Linda for a reminder about that. We value the beauty in the environment, indoors and out. This is the hard part. Design experiences to activate the senses and inspire learners to wonder and explore and to welcome those moments of wonder, those unexpected moments of wonder. We've all had those days where all of a sudden something will take us completely off the track we were on, but it's worth it to go off that track. So, welcome them to build inquiry journeys around them. So that's where we really honor the children's voice in this whole piece. So why do we do it? Let's see, why should we do this? Because learning through play is supported by research. Children are developing those neural pathways. When play and inquiry and learning are intertwined, they're making those connections. Learning language development and expression, I think we can all agree that through play, that's where we really hear that language development. And thinking and problem solving skills are developed through play. It's that trial and error. It's that coming at things, with that frame of mind that I can do this, I'm just going to keep at it. And that those problem solving skills are developed through those playful inquiries. And then I also want to keep this in, we've talked a lot about the what and the how you might do things, but really Why are we doing what we do? What's the purpose? And so this is Simon Sinek's golden circle, and it starts with the why. And so when you go back into your classrooms, I want you to think about, why am I doing it this way? Why would I put this out for the children in this way? Why am I going to read this story with them? You know, we've talked a lot right now about the what it could look like and how it could roll, but keeping that sense of why is really important for you. So just to kind of finish up, wow, we're just about out of time, which is great news. I kept it right to almost an hour. As you go into your week tomorrow, what's something you could start doing? And what is something you might want to stop doing? And what is something you want to keep on doing? You're going to continue to do. I like this as just a little reflection, just maybe you can think about something. Maybe tonight this conversation has got you thinking that, you know what, I really like that we're doing this. I'm going to keep doing this. Or maybe I could start doing this. Maybe I could grab that checklist, not a checklist, that list of ideas that are giving options to kids. I could keep that on my plan book and make sure that I'm checking in with that. So just a little reflective piece for you at the very end of our conversation tonight. And hopefully you'll realize that play is not a break from learning, endless, delightful, deep, engaging, practical learning, and the doorway into a child's heart. That really speaks to me. And here's some info about me. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, that's my Twitter handle @KeeneyLou. That's my email. If you'd like to drop me an email anytime to chat, I'd love that. This is a picture of me having the most wonderful day at the Eric Carle Museum in Massachusetts a couple of years ago. I actually got to do a school visit with some teachers in Connecticut and do a workshop with them. And it was a 40-minute drive to get to the Eric Carle Museum. And if you know the Very Hungry Caterpillar, and you know the Very Quiet Cricket, and you know all of the Eric Carle stories, I had to go to his museum. And it was my face was pretty much that the whole day that I was there. Engaging with, that's a picture of him. He's obviously not that tall, but just that was a whole wonderful opportunity to play with the materials and the books and the inspiration that came from Mr. Carle. So there you go. Thank you so much for engaging and being here. And thank you so much for spending the time on the end of your weekend. And I'm just going to have a quick read here. I'm just reading about, I'm going to just comment, yes, often our children don't get outside. You're exactly right. So anytime we can get them outdoors, we love to do that. So thank you again for this opportunity. It's been a treat for me. And I appreciate so much that I've had this chance to meet with you across the oceans and across the time zones. What a treat. Sometimes we hate the technology, but boy, this has been fun for me. So thank you very much.
Kirsten, can you hear me? Thank you so much. Yeah, and I moved out so many times during the session. Network is too bad. Extremely sorry.
Oh no, it's fine.
I can't help it. Yeah, but yes, the chat is flowing with thank you. So everyone is thanking you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was amazing. I missed a lot, so I'm going to rewatch it. This is the scenario over here. But I could pick up some fabulous, educators whom you shared. Kat Madoc, the guru of inquiry, Kathy Short, and yes, we should start with the why. We keep on thinking about how, what, when, but we forget that why. So yes, Simon Sinek's Golden Circle is a good start point. And yes, it was amazing because you were inquiring throughout the session. So it's like a kind of meta learning for them, and we thoroughly enjoyed it, and they learned a lot. And I could see in the chat box that all of them are thanking you. And yes, and thank you so much for spending quality time with us. It's the morning of your weekend, and yes, for but this is the first weekday for us in Bangladesh. So yes, those who are joining us from Bangladesh on the first day of the week, Yes, kudos. You are real learners. So I just have a small token of love and appreciation for you. I hope my network will allow me. uh, just trying to put it up. Mhm. Just allow me 1 minute. I'm just trying again. I don't want to miss it. Am I audible? Can you hear me? Are you still with me?
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. I love it. Thank you very much. What a treat for me. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thanks to Chad for making this happen, to our friend Chad
It
Hyatt,
was
who
a very thought-provoking session indeed, and yes, they learned to your questions, and it was really a thought-provoking session for us, all of us. Thank you so much, Christine, and yes, thank you so much, audience. You were fabulous, highly interactive. Although I missed a lot, but yes, I could catch up your chats. So amazing. You were interacting, answering questions, and by acting as active learners, not passive receivers of knowledge. So it's amazing. It's amazing. Thank you so much, and see you next week. Thank you so much, Christine. I would request you to conclude the session with.
a pleasure. Everybody have a wonderful night. Thanks again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we end the podcast.